speed of life. No longer just dawn to dusk, we are plugged in, literally and figuratively, 24/7, 365. At home, at work, at play. Electricity powers all that we do. Today, we can't imagine being without power. While less than 100 years ago, the prospect of power for residents of southeast Georgia and northeast Florida remained dim.
Well, the biggest city I went to was that I can remember. I was a girl. I was still in school. My mother visited someone in Jacksonville. When I thought I was grown, I started going places with my husband, and we would go to Brunswick and different places. That's how I got to know where the cities were. I was fascinated with the cities too. The bright lights and everything, I wasn't used to that.
By the 1930s, lights burned bright in major cities across the country. But here in northeast Florida and southeast Georgia, residents were still in the dark. They were told it was too expensive and not profitable to bring them electricity. Life was hard work, as every chore involved manual labor, from pumping water to chopping wood for cooking, canning, boiling, and washing to ironing, milking, and heating.
Goodness, it was hard. When my first child was born, we didn't have lights. And of course I put out a washing every morning, In cold weather, I washed outside, and then hanging them on the line, they would freeze in the cold weather while I was hanging up them diapers. And so it was wonderful whenever electricity come and we got a washing machine. And that was just great. But it was pretty tough on me.
As the only boy in the family, I had all the chores to do. That was one thing, and toting that water was one of them. And the other thing, everybody had wood heaters. And I would always go with my daddy in the woods to get wood to burn in that heater, and wood to burn in the wood stove, to cook with. And it was my job to cut that wood and tote it upstairs. And we had a heater in the store. I had to keep the wood in there.
President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed an executive order in 1935 establishing the Rural Electrification Administration. A year later, the Rural Electrification Act, or REA, was passed by Congress, enabling qualified organizations to apply for financing to form nonprofit entities that would bring power to the rural areas. Electric cooperatives were born. Okefenoke Rural Electric Membership Corporation was the 92nd cooperative founded under the REA program, incorporated in Nahana, Georgia in September of 1939.
Well, there was a man, or two men would kept coming through, and they would talk to my daddy and my husband. They would talk mostly to the men about putting the electricity through. And a lot of women didn't want it because they were afraid of it. They were afraid of electricity. And my mother was one of them. She didn't. She said, "Oh no, we can get electrocuted. We're fine like we are. We don't need it." And quite a few of them said they didn't need it. But the majority was curious, and they wanted it. And it took them a while to start running. When they start running the lines through, people would come out and look. They were like, what are we asking for? And at first, Mama she fought it. But then I remember when they first did, scared her so bad. But when I switched it on, and the light come on, and she said, "Oh my God!" She said, "This is crazy." And she just sat there and looked at it, and she kept saying, "This is crazy." But I was fascinated with it, and I said, "Well, we can see now." And everybody was talking about the lights. So then, at first that's all we had was the lights. And then we found out we could get electric iron and all that stuff. And I got electric iron from my mother, and she said, I don't want that. She was scared it was going to electrocute her or whatever. So she see me using it, she kept watching me, and she said, oh, you're all right. So then she would iron the sheets, the pillowcases, daddy's shorts, everything. She ironed everything.
Promise of electricity was exciting and scary, but once people had it, life changed forever, and they didn't want to go back to life without power.
It was very hard, but to me, I was happy with everything I had, then. But then, of course, when we got lights, I was still happier because the refrigerator and the electric stove and all that, which we didn't have none, a wood stove in the beginning, and of course you had to get wood.
Well, when electricity come in, it changed everything from chores to luxury, you might say, because with all the work that you had to do the old way was forgot about, and most of the things that you wanted to do to live your life with electricity, it just come so easy. It changed everything, and for the better. Got our first television, we went down to Jacksonville, and we went to the Philco distributorship and got where we could sell televisions, and we bought one for the store. That was the first one that we ever had, and we brought it back home and put it in the store, and that was, and most people in St. George didn't even have a television. And we brought it back and set it up in the store and turned it on, and it would play all day. And one of the most amazing things was that like during the World Series or something, there'd be so many people around that television watching the World Series that you couldn't even walk hardly.
OREMC energized its first lines in Georgia on August 1st, 1940. It was Christmas Eve of that same year when the lines were energized in Florida. World War II hampered the co-op's growth in the early years. As of 1947, OREMC had 948 members of record and only 314 miles of line. But a decade of steady growth was realized as the country got back on its feet. In 1957, OREMC had grown to 4,068 members and 1,383 miles of line. Edward Brand was hired on at OREMC in 1950 and was part of the building years.
When I went to the co-op in 1950, there was one mechanic, one warehouse man, and three outside. Well, there's four outside men, and then Harry Smith was supervisor. We had one maintenance truck. We had three men on the pole truck. And I wound up, they put me right on the pole truck to drive the pole truck with three big fellas in there riding. We all four rode in that pole truck back and do the work. We'd go to McClenny. Of course, a lot of time we'd go to McClenny. Taylor down in that area, we'd spend the night down there. We stayed down there rather than come back home. Of course, the road was dirt from St. George to McClenny, and it was a hard time. You couldn't hardly get down there and back very easy and do much work in a day's time. So we'd stay down there in McClenny. We stayed down there several nights during my coming up there. After that, we had to cut right away and set poles. I drove a truck for them work in construction till about 55. And then I went to maintenance. They put on an extra maintenance truck. We had one truck in Folkestone and one truck out of Nahunta. And then you put on a revolving truck, they call it. I read meters collected over the whole system. And I just spot read meters. We weren't reading, everybody read their own meter, but we spot read meters and mapped. And that was my job for a good many years. They were proud to get lights. When we built a line to anybody, they was, like you talk about being an appreciator of show, they they'd talk to you when you, especially when you was around their house putting in the meter and what have you. They'd come out there to you, and man, they'd be excited when they was getting electricity.
Today, Okefenoke REMC has grown to nearly 37,000 meters, serving over 29,000 consumer members and maintaining more than 3,400 miles of line across Baker and Nassau counties in Florida, and Brantley, Camden, Charlton, Glenn, Ware, and Wayne counties in Georgia. Over 80 years, times and technology have changed, but OREMC remains steadfast in its commitment to our communities, neighbors serving neighbors, and proud to power your life every day.
I don't really have no complaint with Okefenoke REMC. I don't have no complaint. I think they do a good job.
Electricity changed a lot of things, a whole lot of things. But before we had it, we were happy with the way things was. But now to go back to that, oh no, I don't want to go back there.